This is the Managing Change Unit Lesson PowerPoint, Lesson 1. Your learning objectives are to understand what PSHE is and to identify and discuss what some of the ground rules for PSHE lessons might be. How does change make you feel? You can explain your answer to somebody sitting nearby you. You can draw your answer, or you can circle your answer in your workbook. Does change make you feel confident, anxious, timid, excited, or another emotion? You don't have to go with the answers that are on the screen. You might have a different emotion about how change makes you feel. So think about a time when you've had to change something. How did it make you feel? Explain, draw, or circle the answer that you agree with in your workbook. If you would like to challenge yourself, you can do the extra challenge, and that is to give an example of when you have had to change something. So you might have had to change school when you started year 7. You might have had to change into a different class or a different teacher if your teacher has left or you've moved up a year group. Or you may have had to change country. You might have lived in a different country and you changed the country that you live in. So have a go at the first question, and if you've got time, challenge yourself with the extra challenge and write down your answer, giving an example of when you've had to change something. So before we work on any other activities, we're going to check that we understand the important words for today's lesson. So I'm going to read these words to you, and I'd like you to look at the images, at the flashcards on the screen, to check that you are confident in your understanding. You might like to do an activity with a classmate or with a teacher, and there are some options for activities for you to do. So whichever member of staff you are with will tell you which activity you're going to do to help you learn the key words for today's lesson. So the first one is change, personal, safe, independent, social, responsibility, well-being, respectful, economic, health, sensible, silly, skills, future, and listen. I'm going to give you some new information about PSHE. I will read the text to you once, and during that time I'd like you to just listen to what is being read. You may choose to follow it as I read. I'll then read it again, and I would like you to use that information to complete the true or false statements that you should have in your workbook. Okay, so PSHE stands for Personal, Social, Health and Economic Education. PSHE gives students the knowledge and skills to stay happy, healthy and safe, and to prepare them for life and work. In PSHE, students learn how to be responsible for their well-being, understand how to stay safe online and outside of school, to become independent and resilient, and to develop personal and social skills for work. Okay, I'm going to read it through one more time. This time you might like to have your true or false statements in front of you that are in your workbook. And you can have a look to see if you can see any of the answers this time when I read it for a second time. PSHE stands for Personal, Social, Health and Economic Education. PSHE gives students the knowledge and skills to stay happy, healthy and safe, and to prepare them for life and work. In PSHE, students learn how to be responsible for their well-being, understand how to stay safe online and outside of school, become independent and resilient, develop personal and social skills for work. We will have a look at our true or false statements in a moment, and I will read those out to you if you haven't looked at them already. I just want to draw your attention to the extra challenge. So if and when you finish your true or false statements, you might like to challenge yourself further by doing the extra challenge. And that is asking you to give an example of a PSHE topic that you have studied before. So this might be something that you studied in primary school. It might be something that you studied last year or last week. What did you learn about in that PSHE lesson? And did you like it? Did you enjoy the lesson? So that is the extra challenge that you might like to do when you've done your true or false statements. So let's look at our true or false statements. So on your workbook or on the board, if you're working on the board, you need to tick whether the statement is true or false based on the information that we've read in the text and also based on what you know about PSHE. So PSHE stands for Personal, Sexual and Happiness Education. True or false? Tick your correct answer. PSHE teaches students how to stay safe. Do you think that is true or false? Online safety isn't taught in PSHE. Do you think that is true or false? In PSHE, students learn how to look after their mental health. Do you think that is true or false? And students learn skills for their future. Is it true or is it false? So just take a moment to answer those questions. Tick whether the statement is true or false. And remember to complete the extra challenge if you finish that activity before the rest of your peers, before the rest of your friends. If you have not finished, I'd like you to pause the slide because I'm going to read out the answers. Okay, if you have finished, then you can listen to the answers and you can give yourself a tick next to where you've written your response. Okay, so PSHE stands for Personal, Sexual and Happiness Education. That is false. PSHE teaches students how to stay safe. That is true. Online safety isn't taught. That is false because we know that it is taught. Students learn how to look after their mental health. That is true. And students learn skills for their future. That is also true. So you can count up how many you got correct out of 5 and give yourself a score out of 5. I'm going to read some rules to you now that are rules for PSHE lessons. I would like you to tick the rules that you agree with. Always be respectful. Do you think it's important to always be respectful in PSHE? Tick this in your workbook or in your book if you agree with this. Number 2, sit silently for the entire lesson. Do you agree with this? Tick it if you agree, put a cross or leave it blank if you disagree. Number 3, ask silly questions. Number 4, listen when someone is speaking. Number 5, never laugh at what someone says. Or number 6, ask sensible questions. So go back through these rules and put a tick next to the rules that you agree with and that you think are useful for when we're having PSHE lessons. If you are still completing this task, you can pause it now because I'm going to tell you what I think, and I would like you to tick the ones that you agree with first. So pause the clip if you've not finished. If you have finished, then you can listen to the rules that I agree with and see if we have the same answers. So if this was me doing the activity, I would tick number 1, always be respectful. It's so important that we are respectful to everybody within the classroom, to other people, and to the topics that we're discussing when we're doing PSHE. I would not tick number 2 because I don't think students should sit quietly for the entire lesson, because PSHE involves discussion. So a good PSHE lesson will involve you talking through your ideas with a partner or a teacher. So I would not tick number 2. Asking silly questions, I would not agree with that as a rule. I think that would not be very helpful for a classroom in which students are trying to learn and participate. So I would not tick that answer. Number 4, listen when someone is speaking. I agree that is very important, so I would tick that if that was me. Never laugh at what someone says. I would also tick that because I think that's very important, that we never laugh at what anybody says. Our classrooms need to be safe and they need to be open and they need to be supportive. We want everybody to feel that they can talk openly without being afraid of being laughed at. And number 6, ask sensible questions. I would tick this. I think that's a really good rule, that if we're going to ask a question, that it should be sensible and it should support the learning. And we also want people to ask questions in PSHE because that's what makes really good PSHE lessons. So did you agree with the same rules as me? So some of you might have already moved on to this. If you haven't, you might want to look at the extra challenge. Challenge yourself a little bit more. And can you choose one rule from that list and explain why you think it is important? You can use the sentence starter or the phrase in the box to help you. So for example, number 1 is an important rule because. And if you want to challenge yourself, you can finish that sentence with your answer about why you think it's an important rule. Okay, we're going to show our understanding of what we've learned during this lesson. So there are 3 tasks that you can choose from. I would like you to choose one task. I will read through each of the tasks and the support that is there to help you with this. And then you can use your student workbook to select which task you would like to do. So the first choice, number 1, is to write your own list of rules for PSHE. So you can go back to the rules that we looked at before and you can steal some ideas out of that, or you can come up with the rules that you might have learned about previously or that you think would be good and helpful for having a supportive classroom in which everybody learns well. There are some sentence starters for you that you can use if you like. So for example, try to be friendly, supportive, kind, patient are some things that you could say. Don't laugh, shout over people, make silly noises. Always ask questions, ask if you're unsure, encourage other people. So there's lots of things that we can write down as a good rule for PSHE. Your second choice is to draw a classroom with students learning PSHE really well. So what does that classroom look like when students are learning PSHE and they're learning really, really well? Are they being respectful? Are they being sensible? Are they being silly? So the second task is to choose to draw what you think a good learning environment, a good learning classroom in PSHE looks like. Or number 3, you can choose to write down what 2 students might say if they were having a sensible discussion about what PSHE is. So I'm going to show you some. As you can see here, there are some sentence starters and some speech bubbles to show you what your answer might look like for the 3rd task, if that is the task that you have chosen. So you might say to your partner, "Did you know what PSHE stands for?" And their response might be an explanation of what PSHE stands for. Your partner might say, "In PSHE, we study personal, social, health, economic topics. To help everyone learn, we should always be," so you might want to include, after this sentence starter, some of the rules or some of the ideas that you have that will help the classroom to be really supportive and be a really effective environment for learning. So if you've chosen the 3rd task, you can write your ideas into the speech bubbles. You can do either 2, 3, 4, see how many you're able to do when writing about a conversation that 2 friends might have about PSHE. For your final task to review our learning, can you finish the sentence on the board and that's in your workbook? One thing I will remember for my next PSHE lesson is... So try to think of one thing that we've talked about today or that you have learned today that you will remember and you will take through to your next PSHE lesson next week. You can write this in your workbook or you can discuss it with somebody close by you.